Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another cast of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-host, Anna, and I'm here with...
Hello, it's Margaret, all you grieflings and frightlings and Anna, who are we talking? What movie are we talking about today?
Well, Margaret, you better not pout, you better not shout, and you better not cry, 'cause I'm gonna tell you why. He beats you when you're naughty, leaves clementines when you're nice. You better be a good little girl and don't think twice, because you better watch out. You better not pout, because Krampus is coming to town.
Yay! I've been a good girl this year, so I'm not afraid that Krampus is gonna beat me. So, listeners, if you've been bad, maybe you might not want to listen, or maybe you do want to listen to earn
Mhm.
brownie points, because I think Anna and I are on the good side of Krampus.
I hope so. I don't want to get beat with a stick. Um, so we're going to be talking about the film Krampus, but also the history a little bit and some folklore. Before we get into the triggers, Margaret has Bavarian roots. I had the pleasure of studying German in school and got to visit Bavaria. So I think conceptually it'll be really fun to talk about some of the folklore and history and those things, and also talk about the movie that had come out. Now, this is the movie that has Toni Collette in it. There are like 12 different Krampus movies, but that's the one we're going to be talking about. Trigger warning: there is violence against children, and demonic themes, angry cookies, and also snow and power outages, which can trigger some people as well.
Yes. Yeah, I think you've covered it. Also, if you have any family traumas, or it's a holiday movie and it is touching on the complex relationships we have when we have to get together with family, and how some family might be inappropriate, how we might be bullied by certain family members, and just also the expectation that you have to be nice to family members, so you
Mm-hmm.
might not be able to speak your piece or advocate for yourself because you have to tolerate these people that in your day-to-day life you might not
Yeah.
tolerate, and that can be triggering and activating for people, especially since it's the holiday season,
Mm-hmm.
and for many people we have to be around people that we may or may not choose to be around in our daily life. And for some of you, you may be like, I love my family and I love the holidays to see them, and that's
That's
wonderful for
great.
you too.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. And I also have to say the opening scene is one of my favorite opening scenes for any movie, because it shows the less than exciting, happy, joyous time of the holidays, but what I would venture to guess the average family probably goes through. Um, Not all of us are sitting around sipping eggnog, giving huggies and kissies. And if you are, like, more power to you. That's awesome. But a lot of us are dealing with some of the things that Margaret has already mentioned, and just a variety of behaviors that keep everyone on their toes.
Even the ugliness, as Anna touched on in the beginning of the movie, this greed, this, and we'll get more into it, which I really feel like Krampus really is talking about how, as a society, we can lose our humanity, we can lose our compassion, our empathy, our being nice. The movie touches on that, this greed, people fighting over toys and like beating each other up. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing Anna can remember there was a time in society where Black Friday, it was making the news not because of how much was sold, but because of arrests, people
Mm-hmm.
that died. I can remember being a kid and there being deaths, people being
Yeah.
trampled to
Mm-hmm.
death because of Black Friday fights, people
Mm-hmm.
being jailed, or even parents that were then grieving because now their child might be ostracized because they couldn't get them a Furby or whatever.
Right.
The Cabbage Patch doll feels like, what is it, the Cabbage Patch riots of the, was it like the
Yeah.
80s or whatever? look it up on YouTube if you're listening there. It was,
Mhm.
yeah, ugly.
Oh, totally. Well, and I think the most recent, I think, high desirable item probably was the PS5, which came out during the pandemic. So it was totally different in terms of how to fulfill demand than in previous years, where you had like the big box sales and people camping out and people going wild. It just wasn't happening as much because of the restrictions that we had. Um, and with that, I think just talking about family dynamics, we're going to kind of get right into the movie for a second. When the letter to Santa is found and gets read aloud, and it snaps everyone back to reality for a minute. Like this poor, sweet soul wants the best for his family and just wants everyone to love each other and enjoy each other. And then because people can't get along and, his cousins are tormenting him, he goes and rips it up and gets all upset. And then, of course, Krampus shows up. But it just goes to show how easy it is to get caught up in the negativity that someone is providing or is just sometimes everywhere in the holiday season.
Yes, that negativity that, like you're saying, we can get swept into. So Anna, do you feel like Krampus shows up because Max's letter gets ripped up and thrown out the window, or do you feel like he was already on his way and this just sweetened it for him? Because the beginning is this ugliness, this
Mhm.
loss of compassion and empathy. So do you feel like Krampus was like, yeah, I'm coming to this town because these people, they're bad? Or do you feel like, because Max carries guilt, like he feels like he brought
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Krampus?
Well, and I think that, you know, I like to think that Krampus is coming to check on uh Oma,
Hmm.
which is Max's grandmother, because of what happened during her childhood. So I feel like she's just on his route. Like he's got to make sure she's being good and doing good and trying to spread the love and light and brightness, right? And then he comes on to the scene of naughty people everywhere and is like, oh, I think I need to hang out here for a little while.
Yes. Yeah, I took it as right because Oma's story was like
Hmm.
everybody was bad, and so he came. Then
Yeah.
I feel like this is just happening
Hmm.
again, almost like a generational trauma that's happening in Oma's
Hmm.
generation. People were bad, Krampus came. In
Hmm.
Max's generation, people are bad, Krampus
Yes,
came.
exactly. And I think where the film really deviates from the folklore and the story is, it alludes to people being killed during the entire movie. Of course, at the end, we realize that they're just taken into a different reality. But traditionally, Krampus does not kill you. So Krampus dates back to the 12th century, and people have tried to stop him, and I don't like that. There are certain groups that celebrate Christmas that don't care for Krampus, and I prefer him to Santa. I think that it's a great way to talk about what happens if you're good and bad. It's not just you don't get a present. It's, if someone finds out you've done something bad, you may get punished. And the way to avoid that is to behave. And it is really more geared towards children. I think that Krampus scares adults, but generally speaking, in Bavaria, Krampus is celebrated. This is the fun festival. This is a fun time. It's not scary at all. And, the thing that I really like is that if you're bad, of course, you get beat with a switch. But if you're good, you get left treats. And a lot of the time, you're going to wake up and find clementines in your shoes or in your Christmas stocking.
Yes, and I feel like you touch on something really pivotal as Krampus gets judged. Krampus came from a time where physical punishment was a norm. If you did something bad, you were being physically punished. Even if you were jailed, there was an aspect of physical punishment to it. So Krampus, of course, is either going to give a gift or he's going to physically punish you because that was the sign of the times. Then people with Christianity coming in, there's Santa Claus. And so let's make this jolly, happy guy that's more socially acceptable.
Mhm.
And instead of beating the children, he's going to leave them a lump of coal. They're still doing the same work. They're trying to
Mhm.
teach children morality based on the social constructs that they are
Yeah.
born from. And Krampus is made scary so that am I going to behave if there's a jolly old man that's like, hey,
Mhm.
Margaret, you got to be nice? Or if there's this horn, and I like goats,
Mhm.
so it's hard. Like I could see where Krampus is scary and they
Yeah.
make him scary, and also he's just who he
Yeah.
is. He's a goat man who is
Mhm.
trying to tell you behave or I'm gonna hit you with the switch, which
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
right, a bundle of sticks is what he used, right?
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah. And carries them. And I think that kind of the fun thing too about Krampus is that if you do any of the Krampus stuff, parents will tell these crazy stories to their children to freak them out more. And you can be really creative with this character, whereas Santa is very like A, B, or C because we're so used to Santa. But with Krampus, you can really just elaborate and come up with these fantastic tales and all sorts of things and be imaginative and creative. And I think that adds a whole other aspect to it. The other thing is it's a folk tale. It's a fairy tale, and I much prefer the German fairy tales to the ones we see in the United States. It's just I like it, you know, cause and effect, not just everything's okay. Wait for someone to ride up on a horse and rescue you. So I'm a little bit biased, but like if we look at other countries, like for instance, you've got Krampus. In Italy, there's La Befana, so she's a Christmas witch. Papa Noel. You have all these different characters, and it's a lot of fun.
Yes. All these, like you're saying, like all these different characters that really are meant to teach children morality. And I think you also touch on something else, the sadness of immigrating to,
Mhm.
we're both in the United States. And so ultimately, we are all children of immigrants unless you are indigenous and you are native to this country. And then you also have your own set of folklore, your own traditions,
Mhm.
and how to assimilate to the dominant culture.
Yep.
Krampus got lost, Papa Noel, all these beautiful characters and stories get lost, and it becomes Santa Claus, who it becomes the generic stand in for all these other beautiful folklore
Mhm.
characters. And I'm gonna touch on that there's, for me, grief in the loss of my ancestral traditions that have got lost because my family had to assimilate. I was sharing with Anna, we always got clementines in our stockings, and I never knew why until Anna was talking about Krampus, and that's how it was part of his lore. And then it put pieces together for me. I knew my grandma was from Switzerland.
Mhm.
I didn't know where. And when she said that, I was like, she's from the German side. And she carried this when her family immigrated. And then sadly, how that got lost so that she could assimilate to the dominant culture. And then it just became, you put clementines on the bottom of the stocking. That's what Santa does. And there's a sadness because I wish I
Mhm.
would have known that my dad was continuing the Krampus tradition. And I don't even know if he knew that or she was so assimilated because her mom assimilated. I know that
Yeah.
her mom, yeah.
Wow. That's so amazing, though. It's just part of it, if not all of the tradition. It's great that part of the tradition continued on, you know, and it's um it's it's just funny how you can think like something that's so important in one region, people haven't even heard of it. I actually it was funny because I was talking to a friend who's older. And I was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about Krampus on the podcast." And they're like, "What? You have cramps? Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, Krampus." And I had to explain, and they're like, "Well, that's weird," you know. And I was just like, okay. But I think it's cool that movies like this come out because then it exposes people maybe to a more scary or horrific view, but still, something new to learn about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's all perspective, right?
Mhm.
Krampus is scary. He's also, if you were a good kid, it's just like growing up with Santa Claus.
Mhm.
I was a good kid. I'm going to get gifts. I'm going to be rewarded, or
Mhm.
shit, I got to get my act together. I wasn't such
Yeah.
a good kid.
Mhm.
What can I do to be better? It teaches us that self reflection
Mhm.
with, I will argue, society's standards. What is the norm for society? And we could even get into what is good just as being a human,
Mhm.
compassionate, empathetic, don't hurt myself, don't hurt others. And is there a thing you want to add to like really what makes somebody on that, like, and sadly that dichotomy of good or bad, and that
Mhm.
society often decides that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like a level of altruism, so like put the greater good of society as a whole or the entire group ahead of maybe the greater good for yourself sometimes. Don't be selfish, be kind, be thoughtful, like you said. Try to be a good person, don't be mean. Just the golden rule, I think, is probably a really good summation of that. But what the movie does is it talks about a very instilled fear that most children have, which is being taken away from their family.
Mhm.
Right. So Max's family essentially is being picked off one by one. If we look at it through the horror lens, everybody's getting, we assume to be killed, but we find out later it's a little bit different. And it's scary for him. And like you said, he has this guilt complex where he thinks he caused all of this. Like, this is all my fault. Everybody's hurting, everyone's in pain. This is awful. And it's all because of me. And then even towards the end when he's like, just take me, don't take anyone else. And um he still feels this guilt.
So that he can rescue them, that he has this power, not knowing that for Krampus, he's like, yeah, no, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work that way. Everybody's been bad. I'm not taking sacrifices. This isn't, which often we learn in society that, oh, if somebody sacrifices themselves, especially in the United States, because we are a Christian based
Yeah.
country, even though people probably argue that. And I'm just saying, we are raised, most of us, that if one person sacrifices for the greater good gets absolved
Yeah.
their guilt. And Krampus really comes in and says, no, you each have to pay for your crimes. You each are
Mm-hmm.
responsible for what you did. You don't get to sacrifice
Yeah.
somebody. You need to atone,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, for what you've done.
Oh, totally. And I mean, I think that it illustrates very well how like certain countries and certain groups have worked to ban Krampus um, because of that. I don't think it's just because he's scary or devilish in appearance. I think that you hit the nail right on the head, that the concept of atonement is not always in line with the concept of self-sacrifice.
And that it's, as you're talking, I think about how Germany very much demonstrates right now that we look at World War II, they
Mhm.
don't run from that history, or World War One. Children are taught about it. They have to do community service to
Mhm.
atone for what their ancestors did, to say,
Yeah.
this was wrong. As a country, we wronged the world, and how are we making it
Yeah.
better? Which I also find very beautiful as we look at Krampus and saying, okay, then how do we
Mhm.
individually right our wrongs? And I give Max credit. He
Mhm.
really does try.
Yeah.
And in this, though, he's the wrong person
Yeah.
to try, because he's not the one that's done the wrongs, and the family does try to come
Mhm.
together. I appreciate that, as like people are going missing, they're like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to come together for you. They haven't said shit, I'm really sorry.
Mhm.
I invited our drunk aunt. Hey, I'm really sorry. I stole mom's Christmas tree, Angel. I'm sorry
Yeah.
for bullying you, as we see with Max's
Mhm.
cousins. He tries to save them, and one of them tries to help him, but
Yeah.
they're still bullies to the
Mhm.
end.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I have to say the drunk aunt is like my favorite character. She's great. Um, but yeah, and it's just I think it shows too how many times do we have an elder in our family that almost no one wants to listen to, like, oh, they're old, they don't know what they're talking about, and um, things like that. That always sticks out to me every time I watch it. And in part, anyone who's listened to the cast, you know that my grandmother and I had a very special relationship. She was my best friend, and I loved talking to her. I loved spending time with her. It was just I actually recently saw a meme on Instagram that I had posted to my story, and it said, as an adult, I realized all of the magic of the holidays was just because my grandmother loved me so much. And, I think that a lot of the time in many family units and different setups, that it's more of, oh, they're old, they don't know what they're talking about, they don't work anymore, they're retired, they have no concept of what the world is. And people tend to ignore the warnings. And especially, Oma is telling these stories that seem really weird, um, and farcical, like, oh, she got into the brandy or something, um, rather than like, we need to take her serious.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up, that how elders often get discredited throughout the movie. Oh, what is she talking about? What is your grandma saying? Max, they keep discrediting her, and she's trying to share this wisdom. And
Mm-hmm.
even they, it touches on, for so often, immigrants, and I'm going to say like newly immigrants, when she starts to speak in English, because they're not listening to her
Mm-hmm.
in German, and the aunt says, oh, I knew it, this judgment. And I'm thinking, she's more comfortable speaking in German,
Mm-hmm.
that is her
Yeah.
native language. And then how this judgment comes, she can speak English, but it's really hard when English is your second language. You don't have, it's just, it's not comfortable in that
Yeah.
judgment. So again, the aunt being like, oh, I knew it. I was like, you don't, she's
Yeah.
trying to talk to you and you won't understand her in German. You're not making the effort to learn
Mm-hmm.
German. So she has to speak to you
Right.
in English. And even that passiveness, again, let's discredit
Mm-hmm.
Oma. She's just the crazy grandma from Germany that didn't assimilate.
Right. Yeah. And by the time they actually start paying attention, it's really too late.
Yeah. Would you say they were doomed from the beginning, that there was no atonement for, well,
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Krampus gives them another chance. The fact that they're in kind of the snow globe being kept, that's not to say they'll be there forever. Maybe they'll learn a lesson and, come back out into reality. Um, but I do think all of us fall into that category of having oversights and forgetting what's important, getting caught up in BS, whether it's material items, the busyness of the season, familial relationships, our work, our education, whatever it is. We forget sometimes what drew us to it in the first place. And then it's a huge distraction and it makes us think about it in a different way. Like, it's not family, but for instance, okay, let's look at education. Margaret and I were talking one day, um, about some of our classes and the subject of, um, if you've ever been in an educational situation where there's a character that makes you as an individual and or the entire group feel uncomfortable, how do you handle that, and how that can completely impact the group dynamic, the program dynamic, even the dynamic with the professor. And I think that's a really great example. No, it's not family. No, it's not holiday, but it is something that impacts the dynamic. It can change how you view yourself, how you view the program you selected, you view the class you're in, even, your co-students, your professor, the administration at your university. It can change all of those things in just a few moments.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Like those things that just impact us and can change the outcome. So I'm curious because we know that Krampus gives Max the bell,
Hmm.
like he did Oma.
Hmm.
If you were Max, would you have accepted the bell, or would you have done what Max did and thrown it and said no, and then chosen to be in that sort of purgatory with your family?
I well, I do have some guilt issues. I have a little bit of a guilt and imposter complex, so I definitely would have done what Max did. Um, I don't think it would be like an every man for themselves type of situation for me. I definitely probably would have went into purgatory with the fam. What about you, Margaret?
I think that I would have not prolonged the grief. I would have been with the grief. I would have continued. I would
Mhm.
have been like Oma, been like, this sucks. I've lost my family. I have to grieve. How am I making life better? How am I breaking the cycles
Yeah.
of trauma? I feel like if I had stayed, then I'm just perpetuating
Mhm.
all of that. So now Max is still going to be bullied, and
Yeah.
mom and sister are going to fight, and aunt's going to get drunk, and nobody's going to understand Oma, and dad's going to talk about his truck and his guns and being a man,
Yeah.
and poor Adam Scott's just going to try to just keep everything
Yeah.
together while everybody's warring. And
That's a
so
good
changing
point.
that.
That's a really good point. And I think, I guess for me, like the end scene where they're all waking up, it's Christmas morning, everybody's enjoying one another and smiling and happy. That leads me to think like that's their reality now. But that's a really good point. That's might be their Christmas morning reality, or, they're waking up in this cycle every day. Um, I didn't think about it in that way. That's really valid, and I might have to change my answer now. If looking at it in terms of grief, like, yeah, you've got to make meaning out of things that happen. You can't just sit in the same cycle.
Yes. And it would be hard because then
Mhm.
I also wonder at the end of the movie, I'm like, so every morning they're going to wake up like it's Christmas.
Mhm.
And every morning they're going to realize what happened.
Yeah.
When do things start to fall apart for them if this is their daily
Oh yeah.
life? When do they start to fall into old patterns? Are they learning? I mean, as Anna said, like maybe this isn't forever. Then Krampus is probably looking for them to say, okay, how do I change and prove
Mhm.
that they change? And are they capable of doing that?
Totally. Yeah. I agree. That's Yeah, it's interesting. Like, and I feel like too, though, it's got to be kind of a bummer for Krampus to keep because there were so many snow globes to keep all these families around who can't get along. Like, it's got to be really stressful.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think he maintains them, or that's just you kind of just go and you're just
Yeah, they're just
there, you're no longer thought
there.
about?
Yeah, yeah. The elves were a little creepy. Um, I don't know which character like that Krampus brings along. Which one really stood out to you the most?
Ooh, that is a great question. I love the little gingerbread guys because they're cute
Yeah.
and they're like they remind me a lot of just like being a person where people like,
Mhm.
oh, and they just make a judgment by how you look and they
Mhm.
really don't know the inside of you. So the gingerbread, also the little evil teddy bear, just because he reminded me of my dog. I even took a I snapped a picture while I was watching it and sent it to my daughter and my boyfriend. And I was like, Poe made it in Krampus.
That's so cute.
How about you?
Well, I love the gingerbread characters as well. I think that through the thanatology lens, like, it's like life. Everything seems to be okay and kind of sweet and nice and delicious. And then all of a sudden, you realize it's not that at all, and it kind of creeps up on you. So grief does that a lot. And the other one, which I don't know why I like her, she's creepy AF. The little evil monster angel witch thing. Oh, she's
Yeah.
just mean. But I'm like, man, what a great critter to send, because
Hmm.
like she's ruthless and mean and just digging and attacking and just doesn't stop, which is sometimes like our feelings too. But yeah, she just really creeped me out. That's like walking outside uh, on a dark, stormy evening and seeing her would be ugh,
Yeah.
shudders.
Yes, it would be scary, if not terrifying, to see
Yeah.
her.
Mhm.
Yes.
And then I do, I think the Jack in the Box reminded me of Poltergeist.
Hmm. Yes.
I was like, oh, yeah, kind of a nod, but that was really creative, like coming through the vents and stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
I think there were a lot of creative ways to take care of the family.
Yes, there was. Like, and that was part of it, that creativity. And as you touch on caring for the family, when the husband's like, hey, what are we dealing with? And the wife's trying to protect him as of like, I
Mhm.
don't want to traumatize you
Yeah,
anymore. And he's like, I just had to fight myself from like gingerbread cookies. Like,
yeah,
believe me, whatever you have to tell me, like, I'm prepared
mhm,
for it. You can't like
yeah,
censor anything now.
right, yeah, and I think it's interesting though, like how the family comes together after trauma. It's
Hmm.
it's even before Krampus has placed them all together, like as they lessen one by one, they're all really trying to cling to each other. And I think the old saying, you don't know what you have until it's gone, really applies too. Like they've been so caught up in stuff that doesn't even matter that they've forgotten how to be
So in a way, like
together.
Max gets his Santa Claus
Mhm.
wish as he's like wishing for the family to come together for
Yeah.
them to remember. And even we see his grief. Like he misses his sister. He misses that relationship. She's growing up, she's maturing. And
Hmm.
he's trying to make sense of that. I think Adam Scott's character too is really trying to help him navigate, like, hey,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's family, and I guess this is like, good
Hmm.
point. As those two are trying to navigate this, and then we just see like Toni Colletti's character just trying to
Yeah.
maintain. She's caught in that family dynamic that we do see in the holidays, where you're like, how do I just get through the holidays? How am I
Hmm.
showing my family like I am the best version
Yeah.
of me? Because we don't want them to see our weak
What's really
points,
going on?
because
Yeah.
yeah, oftentimes they've capitalized on that or used our vulnerabilities to
Hmm.
hurt us.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And she's like one of my favorite horror actresses, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's arguable the movies she's in, are they horror, are they thrillers? But I adore her. I think she's great. I think the
I
cast.
saw an article called her, she's part of the high exploitation. That was like the greatest high exploitation actresses. And she
She's
was
not even old
in
enough.
there. Yeah. She was in there up with like Betty Davis, and I can picture her. We talked
Yeah,
about her, and
Joan Crawford.
yeah. Hmm.
But she's not even like, she's what? She's only in her 40s, I think.
I don't know how old she is. That just goes to
Well,
show how society classifies women if you're over
I'm
40.
googling that shit right now because I want to know.
Because I was like, what? She's
She's
on this.
51.
what? Because I was like, why is she on this list? Because I was looking up high exploitation movies, and
Yeah.
Hereditary came up there with her.
She's only 51.
Mm-hmm.
That's young.
Yeah, that's young.
The average female life expectancy, I believe, is 86. So that's not.
Yeah.
Well, she's
Unless
still.
it was a picture of her, unless they were counting her mom in Hereditary and Friends, and so I'll give the article credit and say they called it high exploitation because of the older
Yeah.
women in the
Well,
movie and not
and
counting
it is a
Letty.
term like that
Mm-hmm.
was used at the time, and I think that Betty Davis and Joan Crawford were in their 50s when they were in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. So, although I don't agree with that, I will let it pass. And anyone out there, like, if you're listening and you're in your 30s or 40s, or God forbid, your 50s,
Oh,
you're still
no.
really young. Like, you still have a
Yes.
lot of time ahead of you. So enjoy it.
Yes. You still got lots of life. There are lots of fabulous. We've got Toni Colletti as we are digressing here a bit. Jamie fucking Lee Curtis, come on. We've got a lot of powerhouses of older actresses. The actress, I can't think of her name. She's in Everything, Everywhere, All and One. She was in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. She is, I believe, in her 50s. She's the first Asian American to win an Oscar.
Yeah. Um. Oh, it'll come to one of us.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
look it up. So back to Krampus as I'm looking.
Yes. Um. I think that all in all, it's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. If you have the opportunity to go to a Krampus festival, do it. They're a blast. There's one near where I live, and everyone
Ooh.
raves about it. It's actually, I can't, without giving too much information about myself away. It's near my office, my full time gig, and yeah, everybody says it's super fun, super great, which I'm all about it. But I think it's fun, and it's great to learn about other cultures and other tales. And if you get a chance and your kids aren't squeamish, get the Grimm's original fairy tales. Read those to them. Don't PG it up. I think all of us kind of know I'm very anti-Americanized fairy tales because they teach you to wait for someone to save you. And when it comes to change and loss and grief in particular, save yourself.
Yes.
Don't wait for someone to come along and help you because you might be waiting for a long time. There are groups out there, there are supports, there are people to help you through the process, and you deserve all of that. And you are entitled and have every right to seek those things out. You don't have
Yes,
to do
you
this
get
alone.
support.
Yeah.
Yes, you're not alone. Seek support, get support. And then I was talking about, yes, get fairy tales either from, look at your own Hereditary. What were the fairy tales of
Mhm.
your ancestors? Or if you're curious about certain cultures, go ahead and read about their fairy tales. One thing I love about folklore is so often you can read your ancestral, and then when you're curious about, and you can see these
Mhm.
beautiful commonalities between them, which always gets me thinking, like, wow, how did we influence each other, or were these just separate ideas that
Mhm.
each culture came up with on their own? And embrace it, especially here in the States, because there's a lot of people that don't know the rich folklore of their ancestors, and it's so beautiful to find out and be like, okay, this is what got my family through the hard times. And oh, I read about this culture's folklore, and now I can see what gets them through.
Mhm. Oh, I agree. And
Yeah.
it's just a lot of fun. And you might surprise yourself too. A friend of mine was telling me about um this tale or this character that was a god that they grew up knowing folklore about. And so I fell down the rabbit hole and I actually found a story that I heard often in my childhood and was like, "Oh my god, I totally forgot about this until you brought this up to me." And it was a lot of fun, like, listening to the old stories and learning some new ones, and you just never know.
Yes. You never know. Have fun with it. And yeah.
Mhm, definitely. So I do have to ask you, Margaret, Grimm's fairy tales or Americanized fairy tales?
Grimm's. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the way. You?
Oh, just Grimm's. Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. And then in the movie, which character do you most identify with?
Great question. I'm gonna have to go with Oma. I'm trying to
Mhm.
protect the family. I am trying to do my best, but nobody's listening to me for whatever reason it is. And I'm just like, come on. And I've got my one ally,
Yeah.
Max, who's trying to be like, hey, come on. And everybody's still like, just sit by the fire, drink your cocoa, do whatever. You don't know what you're talking about when
Yeah.
I do.
Oh.
Anna?
So I actually identify with the dog. I think what was she called? Rosie, I think.
Yeah, I think, yeah,
Yeah.
Rosie.
Um so I like to be the protector. I love my family. I'm very loyal. Um but I have to do things in a very lone wolf type way, and my solutions are really strange. So, like, it makes me think about when she eats the cookie and also when she runs up the vent. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's totally something I would do. No one else is gonna do it. I'll do it. Or, it's weird. Um, so that's me. I'm like, you know what? You're trying to hurt somebody I care about. I'm just gonna eat you, or run up the vent system and try and attack you, because it's
Yes.
like the element of surprise and the unexpected,
She's
impacted by
fierce.
loyalty. She's definitely an instrumental griever.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes, for sure.
yeah. Well, the next time that you see clementines in the grocery store or you take one out to peel it, we hope that you think of this podcast and that you've enjoyed it. Maybe it's inspired some new traditions for your family in the holiday season. And hopefully, it has helped you think of this season as well as the other seasons in your life in a different way. Thank you so much
Yes,
for listening. Grab a little cup of Bruja Brew, settle down next to your coffin, and we'll see you next time, right, Margaret?
yes. See you next time. Bye.